We probably think of the adaptive division as a way of making CrossFit more inclusive. So why is it that some athletes are feeling excluded after the most recent changes? Welcome back to the channel. Now, it's been a while, but I am once again diving into the adaptive division within the CrossFit Games season. And while for some the changes made for the 2023 season are a step back so that they can make steps forward in the future, for others it feels less like a step back and more like they've been told to step outside. So let's take a look at some of these changes, the good, the bad, some odd things that CrossFit have done, as well as the response and feedback from adaptive athletes themselves. So before we dive into all of this, I just want to say that I'm almost back to 100%. I was without a voice for about a week. It's almost back, which is great. It's letting me talk about things like this. Even though I couldn't record videos, I was still busy trying to tweak some things to the channel behind the scenes, and I wanted to thank those that reached out to me, those that subscribed to the Patreon or did the Buy Me a Coffee through the website. That is so helpful. If anyone else wants to get on board with doing that, I really do appreciate it. I'm going to try and make the Patreon platform something a little bit more interesting as well. Understandably, not everyone can afford to support the channel in that way. You can still help me out just by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it around with some friends as well. And finally, I suppose one big disclaimer before I go into all of this: I am not an adaptive athlete. I'm not a medical professional. My understanding of different conditions, how they affect the body, how that would affect your performance when doing CrossFit is obviously very limited. But I have spoken to a number of athletes. I've tried to get their feedback. So hopefully I'm going to be able to put things across in the right way. But of course, feel free to add to the discussion in the comments. You may well have a more nuanced point of view than myself. So this is just to kind of open the dialogue and start the conversation. So a lot of changes were made to the 2023 CrossFit Games season, and the adaptive division was included in a number of those changes. And understandably, a lot of it's been pitched in a very positive way, and we also understand the need for changes. Last year, we saw a lot of problems with regards to eligibility. People didn't feel that everybody, particularly in the neuromuscular division, belonged there. There was also some ambiguity within the rule book and some wording about whether or not you could compete with non-adaptive athletes and what exactly did that mean. So it's understandable that there were definitely the need for changes to be made within the adaptive division. So news that there was going to be a more thorough process in regards to evaluating people to see whether or not they really belonged in adaptive divisions was understandable. There were also some changes made to divisions that didn't have live in-person finals. Unfortunately, they didn't get live finals this year. Actually, what they got was a step back, sort of with the promise that there would be a step forward in the future, and this was maybe a way to simplify it this year so they could expand upon it in future years. But for example, the vision impaired division, they would have had quarterfinals last year. This year, it's the Open. Whoever wins the Open in that division, well, they are crowned the fittest on earth for that adaptive division. Other divisions, such as the upper and lower extremities divisions, well, they will progress on to quarters, and then the top 5 will be going to the games to represent their division in person. But perhaps one of the biggest changes, and the one that is maybe causing the most issues for some athletes, is the change of the neuromuscular division. Well, that actually is no longer a thing. It has now been renamed as the multi-extremity division. So is that it? Just a simple name change? Well, no, it's more nuanced than that, obviously, and instead of me trying to explain all the ins and outs of the changes and what that means for the athletes, I'm just going to share some of the thoughts that were sent to me. So, for example, talking about the qualifying process. So one of the problems when having to prove that you belong in the division is what they require from you. So for example, one athlete was saying that for some adaptive classifications, well, they're going to require a video of a visit with a medical professional, and then you need to upload that somewhere that they have access to, like YouTube. So like you would do for a qualifier workout video. But what's the difference? Well, they have concerns that their doctor would not actually do this because of the HIPAA laws and their also own privacy practices. So what's the backup plan if a doctor's not going to do that? And we can understand, I think most of us don't want people to video us when we're working and then upload that. And, a doctor that maybe would have fear of a malpractice suit or something like that might not be so accommodating if we're saying, well, do you mind us videoing your examination of me so I can upload that to the internet? So we've got the process itself that could cause a problem, and we've got to think that this is also a global sport, so who knows what privacy laws different countries will have on what doctors would or would not allow to be taped and uploaded. But then there's even the matter of whether or not somebody still qualifies for that division. Very kindly, an athlete put it across to me in the most simplistic way possibly. They basically told me that within the neuromuscular division, that is now the multi-extremity division, you'll find both major athletes and minor athletes. So major athletes would be people with things like cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy, and minor athletes would be those with things like MS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or recovered TBIs, or anyone that might have a medical condition that requires them to wear an AFO device on one leg. And these AFO devices, they allow people to push off when they have no flexion or strength in that limb. So these are sort of broad stroke, the different categories you might have. Well, with the new rules, pretty much those that would be considered minors are now ineligible. So maybe this wording of minor versus major might actually make us agree with this decision, because it's understandable, isn't it, that if an athlete is classified as major, is it fair if they're having to compete against somebody that's got this classification of minor and then they're being beaten by them? Well, then we need to ask ourselves, is it fair then that this athlete that has the classification of minor, well, they need to go and compete against Justin Medeiros or Tia Claire Toomey, because actually they're going to have to sign up for the regular Open. Unless they somehow also qualify for one of the other adaptive divisions, there is nowhere else for them to go. And then if that need for adaptation means that they cannot do the RX workout and they have to do scaled or foundation, and that is not a reflection of their level of fitness or how long they've been doing CrossFit, how hard they've worked, that is a medical condition that is not allowing them to do the prescribed workout, well, how's that going to make them feel? And I mean, is this even a big problem? How many people are we talking about in this division that will be pushed out? Well, from speaking with different athletes, it's looking like maybe 2/3 would be a relatively sensible guess for how many will no longer qualify within the multi-extremity division. And it's funny that CrossFit is making this decision when we see what else they're doing around the adaptive division. For example, you may well have seen this beautiful reel that he did it amazing at the CrossFit Games this year. It's great to see what these adaptive athletes can do, the comeback stories. And this reel was shared. We saw people like Josh Bridges share it. CrossFit themselves shared this reel, which is crazy that they will share it and on the one hand promote how incredible these athletes are, but then at the same time make it that they can no longer compete in these divisions. But what now for these athletes that no longer qualify for the multi-extremity or neuromuscular division? Potentially the solution we would have liked to have seen would be the division to be divided into both a major and minor category that would allow both to compete. Of course, that hasn't happened. So many are saying they are not going to sign up for the Open. They're going to focus solely on CrossFit competitions that are kind of off-season competitions that have adaptive divisions that will include them. Now, of course, some may say to them, you should sign up for the Open anyway. In fact, CrossFit, it's all about numbers. If they see more people signing up, well, then perhaps they can split that division as we would like to see happen. The problem is this. It's too late for that. If these athletes all sign up now, well, they will not be signing up into the adaptive divisions. They'll be signing up for the regular open, and it will just contribute to those numbers. So it really begs the question, have we already permanently closed the door for any hope of expanding the neuromuscular or multi-extremity division at the CrossFit Games? Well, I'd love to know what you think. If you're an adaptive athlete, are you doing the Open this year? What division are you in? Do you like the changes that have been implemented so far? If not, why not? What would you like to see CrossFit do to improve the adaptive division for you? If you're not an adaptive athlete, feel free to chime in below. I'd love to hear your opinion on the whole situation as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.